I am Ame. I am 34 years old. I kept this story to myself for years. Maybe because if I told it, people would think I was crazy. But I still hear that breathing sound every night before I go to sleep. My hands still shake when it rains. At that time, I was a simple worker. I had tried many jobs, from salesmanship to working in a lumberyard. But this one was different. A food distribution company had hired me as a night driver. My route was the back roads between several villages, most of which had small, traditional shops. I was looking for money, not security. I didn't care if it was night or the road was deserted. I just wanted to pay my bills. I had debts, a sick father, a younger sister who was a student. The night of that incident began like any other night. It was hot and muggy. In the warehouse, the workers were loading cargo when a text message came. The person in charge of the distribution wrote, "Ame, the Shamday order is left behind. Please deliver it before midnight." They said they wouldn't take it if it were late. "I'll even charge you an extra card." "Thank you." Shamday. It was a remote village. It had a narrow, winding road that ran through a forest. Everyone said you shouldn't take that road at night. Old drivers even swore that the road was cursed. But me? I was only thinking about the money. I received the shipment at 9:45 p.m. It was a small package, a cardboard box with the address Super Mossin, Shamdir Main Square. Everything seemed normal. I got into the pickup truck. The weather suddenly became cloudy. The street lights were weak but sufficient. It was half an hour to the Shamdir Road exit. The radio was on. An old Iraj song was playing. It's raining and I'm alone. The rain started, damp with the smell of dirt. Everything was going well so far. But what I didn't know was that I had set foot on a path that many had taken and never returned. It was around 10:30 when I entered Shamdir Road. From here, the weather seemed different, heavier. It was foggy, a fog that seemed to swallow the road. The road was narrow, with cracked asphalt and a border full of tall grass. The trees stood like walls on both sides of the road. Tall, quiet, shady. I drove for a few minutes when I realized that the radio was no longer receiving a signal. A continuous hissing sound. I turned it off. There was absolute silence. At that moment, a loud noise came from under the car. It sounded like something had hit it. I stopped. My heart suddenly jumped in my throat. I didn't turn off the engine. The lights were on. I got out. I had a small flashlight. I looked around. I walked slowly around the car. At first, there was nothing. But a few steps further, footprints. Right next to the rear wheel, human footprints. Large, unnatural, 5 toes long. The strange thing was that there was only one pair of footprints. Not two, not back and forth. They had just come to the back of the car. My heart sank. I felt something was looking at me somewhere. Not from the front, not from the back, as if from above. The feeling of that damn gaze. The sound of dry leaves rustling came from behind me. I turned quickly. The flashlight trembled in my hand. There was nothing, only darkness and fog. I ran to the car and jumped behind the steering wheel. The sound of my pulse was ringing in my ears. I put my foot on the gas, but the car didn't move. The wheels were slipping on the mud. It was as if the car was locked in place. At that moment, there was a tapping sound on the roof of the car, like a knuckle tap, regular, slow. Was there something up there, or was I hallucinating? The real fear began at that moment. Fear had settled in my soul like a thorn. The regular rattling of the car roof wouldn't stop. I was panting, and my hands were shaking. The headlights were still on, but their light was lost in the thick fog. I decided to move, even if the car wasn't going well. I put my foot on the gas. The wheels screeched, and finally the van started moving with a thud. I looked in the rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, but the feeling of someone in the car wouldn't leave me. A few meters ahead, The road split into two. There were no signs or markings. The right side was a narrower road leading into the forest. The left side was a little more open. I hesitated. I picked up my phone to check the GPS, but the screen was full of noise. I had no antenna. At that moment, out of my eyes, I saw someone pass by in the side mirror. A long, thin shadow, so long that it was impossible to tell if it was human or not. I turned my head quickly. There was nothing. I had to make a decision. I turned left. My heart was pounding in my chest. I drove for a few minutes, but it was strange. The route didn't change. The trees were the same. The road was still narrow and cracked, and even the fog had thickened. I felt like I was in a cycle, a vicious circle. I looked at the speedometer. The needle didn't move. It was as if I hadn't moved a single meter since I had entered the road. I took my foot off the gas. The car kept moving at a constant speed. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I had to stop, but the brake pedal was stuck. It didn't work. My steering wheel was the same. It was as if the car had decided where to go on its own. I said to myself, Amir, calm down. Maybe you're dreaming. Maybe you're tired. But fatigue couldn't explain this strange feeling of heaviness in my chest. I heard a soft voice from the back seat. It was as if someone whispered, "Why did you come back?" I froze. I slowly turned around. There was no one. The back seat was empty, but one of the seats was buckled. It was as if someone was sitting there. After what seemed like an hour, a faint yellow light finally appeared in the fog. A small building with an old sign. Mossen Hypermarket. Yes, that was the address on the package. I hurriedly parked in front of the store. The van was still moving on its own. Only when I parked did I feel free. I got out. I picked up the package. The rain had stopped, but the fog had thickened. The shop door was half open. The yellow light of the moonlight flickered. I entered hesitantly. There was no one. The shelves were empty and dusty. The smell of dampness and humidity filled the air. The counter was empty. There was only a bell on the table. I gently knocked on it with my index finger. The bell rang, and silence. A few seconds later, from the back of the shop, there was the sound of something being dragged across the floor, as if someone was walking in heavy shoes. Heavy footsteps, very slow. A shadow appeared at the end of the corridor, tall, slightly hunched. Its voice sounded like the breathing of someone who had just returned from a run. A scratchy voice whispered, "Come back, it's late." I hesitantly said. I brought the package. Order from the Shamdu hypermarket. There was no answer. The shadow did not come forward. He was just standing there. He whispered again, "You don't belong here." I quickly put the package on the table and ran out. The door of the store slammed shut behind me, without anyone knocking. I got in the van. My whole body was shaking. I said I just had to get off this damn road. I started the car. The car started. I stepped on the gas and turned back to the main road. But what I saw blew my mind. The road was back the way I had come. The trees, the curves, everything was repeated like a movie in reverse. In the mirror, a woman in a white dress was sitting on the trunk of the van. Her hair was stuck to her face. Her eyes were closed. Her hands were hanging down. I didn't dare turn around. I just kept on accelerating. The woman slowly raised her head. Her eyes were empty, just two dark holes. From the fog, I heard a soulless female voice. "Why didn't you help?" I didn't understand what she was saying. I didn't want to know. I just gasped. I gasped. I came to my senses and saw that it was the same crossroads again. The same choice again, right or left. But this time someone was standing in the middle of the crossroads. An old man in an old coat, a cane in his hand, an old chapeau hat on his head. He raised his hand and slowly pointed to the right with his cane. I braked. I rolled down the window and said in a trembling voice, "Excuse me, which way is the way back to the main road?" The old man smiled sadly and said, The right. Always choose the right one. If you turn back, you won't come back. What? I wanted to ask more, but the old man disappeared. He disappeared, like smoke in the fog. I stayed. I doubted, but I fell in love with the sea and chose the right path. I chose the right path. Although my hands were wet from the stress on the steering wheel, I listened to the old man. Maybe he was the only guide I had. The car was moving slowly. The fog was thinning. I felt like I was finally getting out of that hell. But just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, a strange, muffled sound came from the car's recorder. The recorder was off, but a voice, as if it had been recorded, played in the car. A little girl's voice. "Save me." I quickly glanced at the back seat. It was empty, but I felt something breathing there. Not the sound of human breathing, a wet, rough, muffled sound. The voice played again. "Save me, please." My legs were frozen. My brain wouldn't give me any orders. For a moment, I felt like I was going to faint, but I held myself back. I stayed at the road. A few minutes later, I saw a faint light through the trees. A wooden hut that looked as if no one had lived in it for years. The windows were broken. The door was crooked. I could smell burnt smoke. Against my better judgment, something forced me to stand. It was as if an invisible force was saying, "Go inside. See the truth." I got out. With every step I took toward the hut, I felt the world around me grow darker. I pushed the wooden door with my hand. It made a loud noise and opened. The space inside the hut was full of dirt and cobwebs. In the middle of the room, there was a broken wooden table, and on the walls were charcoal drawings. Faces without eyes, bodies suspended in the air, long, black hands. And in the center of the wall, in large letters, it was written, "No one crosses the road." My heart trembled. I turned to run away, but the door of the hut closed on its own. At that moment, I heard the sound of a child's footsteps. I turned and saw her, a little girl in a torn white dress. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were empty. Her lips were cracked. She said softly, "You came to save me, right?" I was speechless. I could only nod. She stretched out her small, cold hand towards me. I reached out, and at that moment I heard a terrible explosion behind me. I turned and saw the window of the hut burst. From the fog, a man with a burned face and white eyes ran in. The girl screamed. I unconsciously grabbed her hand and ran outside. The car was running. It seemed like it was waiting for us. I threw the girl in the car and jumped behind the wheel myself. I stepped on the gas and drove away from the hut without looking back. The little girl was sitting quietly in the seat next to her. She said in a thin, hoarse voice, "You're the first person who dared to help me." I asked, "Who are you? What happened here?" She lowered her head and whispered, "Years ago, my dad and I had an accident on this very road. My dad went to get help, but no one came. I got stuck in the car. I burned out. I'm stuck here." I caught my breath. The girl continued, "Everyone crosses this road. If they don't help, they never cross it again. These are the rules of the road. The Shamdur Road is theirs now, forever." I looked in the rearview mirror. Again the fog, again the darkness. But something was different. This time in the fog, hundreds of human shadows stood. All of them were motionless, with empty eyes, staring at us. The girl said, "Don't be afraid. The way to salvation is near. You just have to promise. Tell me your story." I said, "I promise. I promise to God." At that moment, the road gradually became brighter. The fog cleared. Stars appeared in the sky. I slowed down. The road turned into a clean asphalt path. Streetlights appeared. I couldn't believe it. I was back in the real world. I looked at the girl, but the seat next to me was empty. Only a white jasmine flower lay on the seat, and the girl's voice rang in my ears. "Don't forget me.